The automatic doors of Greenway Market slid open with a soft whoosh as Lisa Thompson hurried inside, her sneakers squeaking slightly against the polished floor. She glanced at her phone screen. 7:45 p.m. The store closed at 9, which gave her just enough time to grab what she needed before picking up her daughter Sophie from her neighbor. Mrs. Patterson's apartment. Lisa's blue scrubs were wrinkled from her 12-hour shift, and she could feel the exhaustion settling into her bones. Her hair, pulled back in a messy ponytail, had started to come loose hours ago. She grabbed a shopping cart, one of the smaller ones, and pulled out her carefully written grocery list from her pocket. The paper was worn from being folded and unfolded multiple times throughout the week as she planned every purchase. Behind the customer service counter, Robert Hayes straightened his tie and smoothed down his thinning hair. At 42 years old, Robert had been the store manager for 3 years, and he took great pride in maintaining what he called standards. He wore his authority like an expensive suit, always making sure everyone knew who was in charge. His eyes followed Lisa as she moved through the entrance, taking in her tired appearance and work clothes. Robert had been dealing with complaints lately. Mrs. Wellington, one of their most prominent customers, had mentioned just last week that the store was attracting a different crowd these days. She'd made it clear that she and her friends from the country club preferred shopping somewhere that felt more exclusive. Robert knew that keeping customers like Mrs. Wellington happy was crucial for his career advancement with the company. Lisa pushed her cart toward the produce section, mentally calculating prices as she walked. Sophie had been asking for strawberries all week, but at $4 a container, they were a luxury she couldn't justify. Instead, she headed for the bananas and apples, checking each price tag carefully. She picked up a bag of carrots and examined it, making sure there were no soft spots that would mean the vegetables wouldn't last the full week. The store was busy for a weeknight. Well-dressed customers moved through the aisles, their carts filled with organic produce and premium brands. Lisa noticed a woman in designer jeans casually tossing items into her cart without checking a single price tag. She tried not to think about what that kind of financial freedom must feel like. Robert watched from his position near the front of the store. He developed what he called his customer assessment skills over the years. He could spot potential shoplifters, coupon fraudsters, and what he considered problem customers from across the store. Something about this woman in the scrubs bothered him. Maybe it was the way she was checking every price, or how she looked so out of place among their regular clientele. Lisa made her way to the meat section, where she stood for several minutes comparing prices per pound. Ground turkey was on sale, but even the sale price stretched her weekly budget. She'd been hoping to make Sophie's favorite tacos this weekend, but it might have to wait until next payday. She selected a smaller package and placed it carefully in her cart. A well-dressed couple walked by, the woman commenting loudly to her husband about the interesting mix of people shopping there lately. Lisa pretended not to hear, but she could feel heat rising in her cheeks. She was used to feeling out of place in upscale stores, but it never got easier. Robert decided to take a walk through the store, something he did regularly to maintain visibility. He told himself it was part of good management, but the truth was he enjoyed the way customers straightened up when they saw him coming. His polished black shoes clicked against the floor as he made his rounds, stopping occasionally to straighten a display or check on his employees. As he passed the cereal aisle, Robert noticed Lisa comparing generic brands to name brands, clearly weighing the price differences. She was holding a box of the store brand cereal, reading the ingredients list. Robert shook his head slightly. These penny-pinching customers always took forever to make simple decisions. Holding up traffic in the aisles, Lisa continued through the store, crossing items off her list. She allowed herself one small splurge, a chocolate bar that was on sale for Sophie. It was the kind of small joy that made the tight budget worth it. Seeing her daughter's face light up over something as simple as a candy bar. In the dairy section, Lisa spent considerable time in front of the milk display. The organic milk Sophie preferred was nearly twice the price of regular milk, but Sophie had been dealing with some stomach issues lately, and the pediatrician had suggested trying organic dairy products. Lisa stood there for almost 5 minutes, holding both containers. Trying to decide if she could make the math work, Robert appeared at the end of the dairy aisle, pretending to check expiration dates on the yogurt display while keeping an eye on Lisa. He'd seen customers like her before, the ones who stood there forever, clearly trying to decide what they could afford. It annoyed him how these customers turned grocery shopping into such a production. Lisa finally chose the regular milk and continued to the bread aisle. She'd learned to shop the perimeter of the store first, getting the necessities before moving to the center aisles where it was easier to be tempted by things they didn't really need. The bread section offered another decision point. The whole grain bread Sophie's teacher had recommended for her school. Lunches cost $3 more than the regular white bread. Lisa picked up both loaves, comparing not just the price but the nutritional information. She wanted to give Sophie the best, but every dollar mattered when you were stretching a paycheck to cover rent, utilities, groceries, and childcare. Robert continued his surveillance, growing more irritated by Lisa's methodical shopping style. He prided himself on running an efficient operation, and customers who took this long to make simple decisions disrupted the flow of business. He began formulating a plan. Maybe it was time to make an example of someone, to send a message about the kind of behavior that was and wasn't acceptable in his store. Lisa reached the checkout area with her carefully selected items, pulling out her coupon organizer. She'd spent time the night before organizing the coupons by expiration date and matching them to items on her list. It was a system that helped her save money, but it also meant she had to be extra careful to make sure everything was still valid. Robert positioned himself near the customer service counter, watching as Lisa approached the checkout lanes. He noticed the coupons in her hand and felt his jaw tighten. This was exactly the kind of situation that led to problems. Customers trying to use expired coupons or gaming the system. Somehow, the stage was set for what would become a confrontation that neither Lisa nor Robert could have predicted would change both of their lives forever. Lisa chose the checkout lane with the shortest line, hoping to get through quickly. The cashier, a young woman named Ashley who couldn't have been more than 19, greeted her with a tired but genuine smile. Ashley had been working since 3 in the afternoon and was counting down the hours until her shift ended. As Ashley began scanning items, Lisa organized her coupons on the small counter space beside the card reader. She had 5 coupons total. 1 for the ground turkey, 2 manufacturer coupons for cleaning supplies, 1 for the store brand cereal, and 1 for laundry detergent that she'd been saving for weeks. Each coupon represented real savings that could stretch her grocery budget another few days. The line behind Lisa started to grow. A businessman in an expensive suit tapped his fingers impatiently on his card handle, checking his watch every few seconds. Behind him, an elderly woman leaned heavily on her shopping cart, while a young couple with a baby carrier chatted quietly about their dinner plans. Ashley scanned the first coupon without any issues. The ground turkey discount came off automatically, bringing the price down by $2. Lisa felt a small sense of relief. The cleaning supply coupons also went through smoothly. But when Ashley picked up the laundry detergent coupon, the register made a sharp beeping sound that everyone in the area could hear. "I'm sorry, but this coupon expired yesterday," Ashley said quietly, trying to keep her voice low. She held up the small piece of paper, and Lisa could see the fine print date that she'd somehow missed when organizing her coupons the night before. Lisa felt her stomach drop. She looked at the coupon more closely, squinting at the tiny numbers. "Oh no. You're right. I'm so sorry. I thought it was still good." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the quiet store, it seemed to carry. Ashley was about to simply set the coupon aside and continue with the transaction when Robert appeared beside the checkout lane as if he'd materialized from thin air. He'd been watching from the customer service counter, waiting for exactly this kind of situation. "Is there a problem here?" Robert's voice was loud enough that several customers in nearby lanes turned to look. He positioned himself so that he was facing not just Lisa and Ashley, but also had a clear view of the growing line behind them. Ashley looked uncomfortable. "Just an expired coupon, Mr. Hayes. No big deal." I was just going to continue with the rest of the transaction. But Robert had other plans. He reached over and took the coupon from Ashley's hand, holding it up like it was evidence in a courtroom. "Expired by a full day," he announced, his voice carrying across the front of the store. "Ma'am, you do realize that using expired coupons is against store policy?" Lisa felt her face burning with embarrassment. "I honestly didn't realize it was. Expired, I can just pay the full price for the detergent. It's not a problem." The businessman behind her sighed loudly and muttered something about people holding up the line. The elderly woman craned her neck to see what was happening, while other customers in adjacent lanes began to take notice of the commotion. Robert wasn't finished. "This is exactly the kind of thing that's been happening too much lately," he said, his voice getting louder. "People coming in here trying to work the system, using expired coupons, expecting us to just let it slide." Lisa felt like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "Sir, I really didn't know it was expired. I work long hours and sometimes I miss these little details. I'm happy to pay full price." "Long hours," Robert repeated, looking at her scrubs with obvious disdain. "Well, maybe if you paid as much attention to reading expiration dates as you do to trying to save every penny, we wouldn't have this problem." Ashley shifted uncomfortably behind the register. She'd seen Mr. Hayes get stern with customers before, but this felt different. The woman seemed genuinely embarrassed and had immediately offered to pay full price. There was no reason to make such a big scene. The line behind Lisa had grown to 6 or 7 people, and conversations in the area had stopped as everyone focused on the drama unfolding at the checkout. Some customers looked annoyed at the delay, while others seemed uncomfortable with how the situation was being handled. "You know what really bothers me?" Robert continued, his voice now carrying to customers 2 lanes over. "It's customers who clearly can't afford to shop at a quality establishment like this, but they come in anyway and try to cut corners with expired coupons and penny-pinching behavior that holds up our other customers." The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. She could feel tears starting to form in her eyes, but she was determined not to cry in front of all these people. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her wallet. "I'll just pay for everything." "And go?" she said quietly, her voice shaking despite her efforts to stay calm, but Robert still wasn't done. "And frankly, I have to wonder if someone who's this careless with coupon dates might be careless about other things too. Ashley, I want you to double-check all of her other coupons and make sure we're not dealing with any other issues here." The humiliation was complete. Lisa stood there while Ashley reluctantly went through her remaining coupons again, even though they'd already been processed successfully. The entire checkout area had gone quiet except for the beeping of the register, and the sound of Robert's voice explaining to anyone who would listen about the importance of maintaining standards. An older woman named Helen Chun, who had been shopping at this store for over 15 years, watched the scene unfold from 2 lanes over. She'd seen this manager's behavior before, but never quite this blatantly cruel. Something about the way he was treating this tired-looking woman in work clothes bothered her deeply. Near the customer service counter, a woman named Jennifer quietly pulled out her phone. She'd started recording when she noticed how loudly the manager was speaking, thinking it might be useful if the situation escalated further. The woman being humiliated seemed like someone's daughter, someone's mother, and Jennifer couldn't stand watching it happen. Lisa's total came to $43.67 after all the valid coupons were applied. She handed over her debit card with shaking hands, entered her PIN, and waited for the transaction to complete. Each second felt like an hour as the entire front of the store seemed to be watching her. "In the future," Robert said as Ashley bagged Lisa's groceries, "I'd suggest you shop somewhere more suited to your budget. There are plenty of discount stores that might be a better fit." Lisa took her bags without making eye contact with anyone. "Thank you," she whispered to Ashley, who looked like she wanted to apologize but didn't dare with her manager standing right there. As Lisa walked toward the exit, she could hear the conversations resuming behind her. Some customers were complaining about the delay, while others seemed to be discussing what they'd just witnessed. She pushed through the automatic doors and into the parking lot, finally allowing the tears she'd been holding back to fall behind her. The store returned to its normal rhythm, but several customers found themselves thinking about what they'd just seen. Helen Chun made a mental note of the manager's name tag. Jennifer stopped recording and saved the video to her phone. And Ashley continued checking out customers, but she couldn't shake the feeling that what had just happened was very, very wrong. Lisa sat in her car for almost 10 minutes before starting the engine. Her hands were still shaking, and she needed to compose herself before picking up Sophie from Mrs. Patterson's apartment. She couldn't let her 8-year-old daughter see her this upset. Sophie was already dealing with enough stress from their tight financial situation without knowing that her mother had been publicly humiliated at the grocery store. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, wiping away the tear marks and trying to fix her hair. The parking lot was busy with evening shoppers coming and going, but Lisa felt completely alone. She kept replaying the manager's words in her head, especially the part about shopping somewhere more suited to her budget. The worst part was that other people had heard it. Strangers now knew her business, knew she was struggling financially. Back inside the store, Helen Chun finished her own shopping, but she couldn't stop thinking about what she'd witnessed. At 72 years old, Helen had seen plenty of unfair treatment in her lifetime. But the manager's behavior toward that young woman had been particularly cruel. She'd been shopping at Greenway Market since it opened, and she'd never seen anything quite like it. Helen approached the customer service counter where a different employee was working. "Excuse me, dear," she said to the young man behind the counter. "I need to speak with someone about filing a complaint against your manager." The employee, David, looked nervous. "Is there something specific that happened, ma'am?" "I just watched your manager publicly humiliate a customer over an expired coupon. The way he spoke to that poor woman was completely inappropriate and unprofessional." Helen's voice was firm but calm. She'd learned over the years that staying composed often got better results than raising her voice. David glanced around nervously. "I can take down your information and make sure it gets passed along to corporate, but Mr. Hayes is still the manager here." "Oh, I'm not just complaining to you, dear," Helen said with a knowing smile. "I'm complaining to everyone who needs to hear about this, but yes, please take down my information." Meanwhile, Jennifer had made it to her car and was looking at the video she'd recorded on her phone. The audio was clear enough to hear the manager's harsh words, and the video showed the woman's obvious distress. Jennifer worked in social media marketing and knew how quickly things could spread online when they touched a nerve with people. She hesitated for a moment, knowing that posting the video would put the woman's private moment in the public eye. But she also knew that this kind of behavior needed to be called out. The manager had chosen to make it a public scene, so maybe the public needed to see what had happened. Lisa finally started her car and drove the short distance to Mrs. Patterson's apartment building. Mrs. Patterson was a retired teacher who watched Sophie after school and during Lisa's evening shifts. It was an arrangement that worked for both of them. Mrs. Patterson enjoyed the company, and Lisa could afford the childcare. "Mommy!" Sophie ran to the door when she heard Lisa's key in the lock. At 8 years old, Sophie was bright and observant, with her mother's warm brown eyes and an infectious smile that could light up any room. "Hi, sweetie," Lisa said, forcing her voice to sound normal. "Did you have a good time with Mrs. Patterson?" "We made cookies." "Well, we made one batch and then ate most of the dough." Sophie giggled, but then her expression changed as she looked more closely at her mother. "Mommy, are you okay?" "Your eyes look red." Mrs. Patterson, a woman in her 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes, noticed it too. "Lisa, dear, you do look upset. Is everything all right?" "I'm fine," Lisa said quickly. "Just tired from work." "You know how it is?" But Sophie wasn't convinced. She'd become very good at reading her mother's moods over the past year since her father had left. "Did something bad happen at work?" "No, baby, nothing happened at work. I just stopped at the grocery store and it was crowded. You know how I don't like crowds when I'm tired." Mrs. Patterson gave Lisa a concerned look, but didn't push the issue. "Well, you two get home and get some rest. Sophie was wonderful today, as always. As they walked to their car, Sophie slipped her small hand into Lisa's. Mommy, when you're sad, it makes me sad too. You can tell me what's wrong, I'm big enough. Lisa squeezed her daughter's hand. I know you are, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups just have hard days, but it doesn't mean anything is really wrong. How about we go home and you can tell me all about those cookies you made? Back at the store, Ashley was finishing her shift, but she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. With the woman in scrubs? She'd been working retail for 2 years and had seen plenty of difficult customer situations. But Mr. Hayes had been unnecessarily cruel. The woman had been polite, apologetic, and willing to pay full price. There had been no reason to embarrass her like that. Ashley's manager replacement for the evening shift was Kevin, a guy in his 20s who'd been working there longer than Ashley. As they counted down her register, Ashley found herself telling him about the incident. Yeah, Hayes has been doing that more lately, Kevin said quietly, making sure no one else could hear. He's been getting pressure from corporate about profit margins, and I think he's trying to show them he's tough on policies. But between you and me, he takes it too far sometimes. Oh, that lady seemed really nice, though. She was just tired from work, you know. We've all made mistakes with expired coupons. Kevin nodded. I know. But don't let Hayes hear you talking about it. He doesn't like it when employees question his methods. At home, Lisa and Sophie went through their evening routine. Sophie chattered about her day while Lisa helped her with homework and got dinner ready. But Lisa was having trouble concentrating. Every few minutes, she'd remember something else the manager had said, and the embarrassment would wash over her again. After Sophie went to bed, Lisa's phone rang. It was her best friend Carmen, who worked as a reporter for the local news station. Carmen and Lisa had been friends since college, and Carmen was one of the few people who knew how difficult things had been for Lisa since her divorce. Hey girl, how was your day? Carmen's cheerful voice came through the phone. It was okay, Lisa said, but Carmen immediately picked up on the hesitation in her voice. That doesn't sound convincing. What happened? Lisa found herself telling Carmen the whole story. Once she started talking, she couldn't stop. She told her about the expired coupon, the manager's loud voice, the way other customers had stared, and how humiliated she'd felt. Carmen listened without interrupting. But Lisa could practically hear her friend's reporter instincts kicking in. Lisa, that's not okay. That manager had no right to treat you like that. It's fine, Carmen. I just want to forget about it. No, it's not fine. This is exactly the kind of story that needs to be told. People abuse their power over others who they think can't fight back. Please don't make this into a news story, Lisa said quickly. I can't handle any more attention. I just want to move on. Carmen agreed, but privately she was already thinking about how often this kind of thing probably happened to people who couldn't afford to shop at upscale stores. She made a mental note to keep her ears open for similar stories. Meanwhile, Jennifer's video was starting to gain traction online. She'd posted it on her personal social media accounts with a caption about treating all customers with respect, regardless of their appearance or economic status. Within a few hours, it had been shared dozens of times, with comments from people sharing their own experiences of being judged, while shopping. Helen Chen had also been busy. After leaving the store, she'd called the corporate customer service line and filed a formal complaint. She'd given them her name, the time and date of the incident, and a detailed description of what she'd witnessed. The customer service representative had assured her that all complaints were taken seriously and would be investigated, but Helen wasn't stopping there. She'd also decided to mention the incident to her husband when he got home from his evening meeting. Her husband David was well connected in the community, and Helen had a feeling that this story was far from over. As the evening progressed, the ripples from that 10-minute interaction at the grocery store continued to spread in ways that none of the people involved could have imagined. Lisa had no idea that her humiliation was about to become something much bigger, and Robert had no clue that his moment of power was going to cost him everything. The next morning, Helen Chen was having coffee with her husband David when she told him about the incident at the grocery store. David Chen was a quiet man who rarely got angry, but as Helen described what she'd witnessed, His expression grew darker. You said the woman was wearing scrubs? David asked, setting down his coffee cup. Yes, blue scrubs. She looked exhausted, like she'd just finished a long shift. The poor thing was just trying to buy groceries for her family. David was quiet for a moment, thinking. As chairman of the board at Riverside Children's Hospital, he'd been working closely with their new pediatric trauma surgeon who'd just transferred from the state medical center. The woman was brilliant, had impeccable credentials, and had been putting in extra hours to help cover the emergency department while they searched for additional staff. Helen, can you describe this woman? What did she look like? Helen gave him a detailed description, and David's suspicions grew stronger. I think I might know who this is. If I'm right, this manager made a very big mistake. Meanwhile, Jennifer's video had exploded overnight. What started as a post on her personal social media accounts had been shared hundreds of times. The comments section was filled with people sharing their own stories of being judged or mistreated while shopping. Many commenters were outraged by the manager's behavior and demanding that someone identify the store so they could avoid shopping there. Jennifer woke up to dozens of notifications on her phone. Her video had been shared by several popular social media influencers, and local community groups were picking up the story. Some people were already identifying Greenway Market based on the distinctive checkout counter design visible in the video. At the hospital, Lisa was starting her morning rounds when her colleague, Dr. Martinez, stopped her in the hallway. Lisa, have you seen what's going on online? There's a video going viral about some store manager treating a woman terribly, and people are saying it happened at that fancy grocery store near the hospital. Lisa felt her stomach drop. What kind of video? Someone recorded this manager publicly humiliating a customer over an expired coupon. The woman was wearing scrubs, and people are speculating that she works in healthcare. The whole thing is just awful to watch. Lisa's hands started shaking. She'd hoped the incident would just fade away, but now it sounded like her humiliation was being broadcast to thousands of people. I need to see this video. Dr. Martinez showed her the video on his phone, and Lisa watched herself being berated by Robert in front of all those customers. Seeing it from an outside perspective made it even worse. She could see how tired and defeated she looked, how she just stood there and taken the abuse. This is absolutely disgusting, Dr. Martinez said. I hope this woman sues the store. Number 1 deserves to be treated like this. Lisa couldn't bring herself to tell him that she was the woman in the video. Instead, she excused herself and went to the staff bathroom, where she locked herself in a stall and tried not to cry. She had to get through her shift. But knowing that her private humiliation was now public made everything so much worse. Back at Greenway Market, Robert was having the best morning he'd had in weeks. The regional manager was visiting today, and Robert was confident that his firm handling of store policies would impress the corporate leadership. He'd even prepared a presentation about maintaining customer standards and preventing coupon fraud. What Robert didn't know was that the corporate office had already received over 50 complaint calls about the incident. The customer service department had been overwhelmed with people demanding action against the store manager, who'd been recorded treating a customer so poorly. Carmen had been watching the video spread throughout the morning. As a reporter, she recognized a story with legs when she saw one. Despite her promise to Lisa not to make it into a news story, Carmen found herself researching the grocery chain's corporate policies and looking into whether this was part of a larger pattern of discrimination. She called Lisa around noon. Lisa, I know you said you didn't want this to become a news story, but it already is one. The video is everywhere, and people are furious about how you were treated. What video? Lisa asked, though she already knew. Someone recorded what happened to you last night. I can see it's you in the video, even though your face isn't completely clear. Lisa, people need to know who you really are. When they find out that a pediatric surgeon was treated like this just because she looked tired after a long shift, it's going to change everything. Lisa felt panic rising in her chest. Carmen, please don't. I can't handle any more attention. I just want this to go away. Lisa, listen to me. You're not just any single mother struggling to make ends meet. You're a doctor who saves children's lives every day. You were coming from a volunteer shift at the free clinic, weren't you? That's why you were wearing different scrubs. Lisa was quiet. Carmen was right. She'd been volunteering at the community health clinic on her day off, providing free medical care to families who couldn't afford to see a doctor. It was something she did twice a month, but she never talked about it because she didn't want recognition. The public deserves to know the truth, Carmen continued. This manager judged you based on your appearance and assumed you were trying to cheat the system. He had no idea he was talking to someone who dedicates her life to helping others. At the hospital, David Chien was making phone calls. He'd confirmed with the Human Resources Department that Dr. Lisa Thompson was indeed their new pediatric trauma surgeon, and the description Helen had given him matched perfectly. David was not only chairman of the hospital board, but he also served on the board of directors for several local charities and community organizations. David called the corporate headquarters of Greenway Market and asked to speak directly with the CEO. When the assistant said the CEO was unavailable, David mentioned his name and position, and suddenly the CEO's schedule opened up. Mr. Chun, thank you for calling. I understand you have some concerns about one of our stores. I do indeed. Your store manager publicly humiliated one of our hospital's most valued doctors last night. Dr. Thompson is a pediatric trauma surgeon who was shopping after volunteering at a free clinic. She's exactly the kind of person your company should be honored to serve. And instead she was treated with contempt and cruelty. The silence on the other end of the phone was telling. The CEO had already heard about the video and the complaints, but learning the identity of the customer changed everything. Mr. Chun, I want to assure you that we take these matters very seriously. We're already investigating the incident. I hope you are, because Dr. Thompson represents everything good about our community. She works 18-hour days saving children's lives, volunteers her time to help underserved populations, and raises her daughter as a single mother. If this is how your company treats people like her, then maybe it's time for our hospital board to reconsider our corporate partnerships. The CEO understood the threat. The hospital was not only a major customer, but several board members were influential community leaders whose opinions carried significant weight. Robert was still preparing for his meeting with the regional manager when his assistant knocked on his office door. Mr. Hayes? There's a call from corporate headquarters. They say it's urgent. Robert took the call, expecting praise for his handling of store policies. Instead, he heard the coldest voice he'd ever encountered from a corporate executive. Mr. Hayes, we need to talk. There's been a video circulating online showing your interaction with a customer last night. Have you seen it? Robert's confident smile faded. A video? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Well, you better familiarize yourself with it quickly, because it's being shared thousands of times, and the woman you humiliated turns out to be a prominent pediatric surgeon who volunteers at free clinics. We've received over 100 complaints in the past 12 hours, including calls from major community leaders. Robert felt the blood drain from his face. A doctor? The woman in scrubs had actually been a doctor? I want you to pack up your office immediately. You're suspended pending a full investigation. Someone from HR will be there within the hour. As Robert hung up the phone, he realized that his moment of power had just cost him everything. The woman he judged and humiliated based on her tired appearance and expired coupon wasn't someone who couldn't afford to shop at his store. She was someone who could probably buy and sell his entire career without thinking twice about it. And the worst part was, she'd never even fought back. She'd just stood there and taken his abuse with dignity, even though she had the power to destroy him with a single phone call. Now everyone was about to learn exactly who Lisa Thompson really was, and Robert was about to discover that karma had been waiting for him all along. Within 24 hours, the story had exploded beyond anyone's expectations. Local news stations picked up the viral video, and Carmen found herself assigned to cover the story professionally, despite her personal connection to Lisa. The hospital's public relations department issued a statement praising Dr. Thompson's dedication to the community and expressing disappointment at how she'd been treated. Lisa woke up to find news vans parked outside her apartment building. Reporters were calling her phone constantly, and Sophie was confused about why there were so many people with cameras outside their home. Lisa had to explain to her 8-year-old daughter that sometimes adults make mistakes and treat people poorly, but that it's important to always try to be kind to others. "Mommy, are you famous now?" Sophie asked as they watched a news report about the incident over breakfast. "I don't want to be famous, sweetheart. I just want to help sick children get better and take care of you." At Greenway Market, the corporate crisis management team had taken over. The regional manager who was supposed to meet with Robert found himself instead dealing with protesters gathered outside the store. Customers were canceling their loyalty program memberships, and several corporate accounts had already announced they were taking their business elsewhere. Robert sat in his empty office, looking at the box of personal items he'd hastily packed. 20 years of retail management experience, and it was all ending because of one moment when he'd let his prejudices get the better of him. He kept replaying the incident in his mind, trying to understand how he'd gotten it so wrong. Ashley, the young cashier who'd witnessed everything, was interviewed by the local news. She spoke carefully, not wanting to lose her own job, but she was honest about what she'd seen. The customer was polite and willing to pay full price. There was no reason to embarrass her like that. She seemed like a really nice person who was just tired from work. The video had now been viewed over 1 million times across different platforms. People were sharing their own stories of being judged while shopping, and the incident had sparked a broader conversation about how customer service workers sometimes abuse their power over people they perceive as vulnerable. Carmen's News station ran a feature story about Lisa's background. They highlighted her work at the Children's Hospital, her volunteer efforts at the free clinic, and her dedication to her daughter as a single mother. The contrast between who Lisa really was and how Robert had treated her made the story even more powerful. "Dr. Thompson represents the best of our community," David Chun said in an interview. "She saves children's lives, volunteers her time to help those in need. And yet she was humiliated simply because she looked tired after a long day of serving others." This incident shows how quickly we judge people based on appearances. Helen Chun also spoke to reporters, describing exactly what she'd witnessed. "I've been shopping at that store for 15 years, but I will never set foot in there again until they make serious changes. No customer should ever be treated the way that young woman was treated." The grocery chain's stock price dropped by 3% in 2 days as customers organized boycotts and investors worried about the brand damage. The CEO held an emergency board meeting to discuss the crisis and determine how to respond. Lisa tried to maintain her normal routine, but it was impossible to ignore what was happening. Colleagues at the hospital were supportive, but she felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She'd always preferred to help people quietly. Without recognition or fanfare, Dr. Martinez found Lisa in the hospital break room, looking exhausted despite it being early in her shift. "How are you holding up with all this craziness?" "I just wanted to go away," Lisa said. "I became a doctor to help people, not to be on the news. But maybe this needed to happen. Maybe people needed to see how good people get treated sometimes." "You're showing everyone that you can't judge someone's worth by their appearance or their bank account." Meanwhile, Robert had been officially terminated. The grocery chain released a statement saying that his behavior was completely contrary to our company values and that they were implementing new customer service training for all employees. But the damage to Robert's career was severe. Word had spread throughout the retail industry, and finding another management position seemed unlikely. Robert's wife, Patricia, was devastated when she learned what had happened. She'd always known. Her husband could be judgmental, but she'd never seen him be cruel to someone who was clearly struggling. The video was painful for her to watch, seeing the man she'd married treating another person with such callousness. "Robert, how could you not see that she was just a tired woman trying to buy groceries for her family?" Patricia asked. "What if someone treated me that way? What if someone treated our daughter that way?" Robert had no good answer. For the first time, he was beginning to understand the impact of his actions. He'd spent so many years thinking about store policies and profit margins that he'd forgotten about treating people with basic human dignity. The grocery chain announced a comprehensive review of their customer service policies. They established a new training program focused on treating all customers with respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived economic status. They also created a customer advocacy position to handle complaints and ensure that similar incidents wouldn't happen again. Lisa finally agreed to do one television interview, hoping that speaking publicly would help put the story to rest. She appeared on the local evening news, speaking calmly about what had happened and what she hoped people would learn from it. "I don't want people to focus on my job title or my education," Lisa said. "Every person deserves to be treated with dignity, whether they're a doctor, a janitor, a teacher, or someone who's unemployed. We should judge people by their character, not by their appearance or their bank account." The interviewer asked if she had any message for the manager who treated her so poorly. Lisa paused, thinking carefully. "I hope he learns from this experience. I hope he realizes that everyone has a story, everyone is fighting battles we can't see, and everyone deserves compassion. I don't want his life to be ruined, but I hope he grows from this." Robert watched the interview from his living room, and for the first time since the incident, he felt genuine remorse. This woman, who had every right to be angry and vindictive, was showing him more grace than he'd ever shown her. It was a lesson in humility that cut deep. 6 months later, Robert found work at a small community grocery store in a different part of town. His new position was entry-level, stocking shelves and helping customers, and he was required to complete extensive customer service training. The work was humbling, but it gave him a new perspective on retail and on treating every customer as a valued human being. Ashley was promoted to assistant manager at Greenway Market. The new store management philosophy emphasized respect for all customers, and Ashley made sure to lead by example. She never forgot the lesson she'd learned that night about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Lisa continued her work at the hospital and her volunteer efforts at the free clinic. The incident had given her a platform she'd never wanted, but she used it to advocate for treating all people with dignity and respect. She established a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing healthcare careers, wanting to help other women who might be struggling as she once had. Helen Chun became a regular volunteer at the free clinic where Lisa worked, inspired by the doctor's dedication to helping underserved communities. She and David also made a significant donation to the Children's Hospital in Lisa's honor. The grocery store incident became a case study in business schools about the importance of customer service training and the potential consequences of discriminatory behavior. But for the people involved, it was much more than a business lesson. It was a reminder that every interaction we have with another person is an opportunity to show kindness or cruelty, understanding or judgment. Sophie, now a little older and wiser, sometimes asked her mother about the time when she was on television. Lisa would tell her that the most important thing she'd learned was that being kind to others, especially when they seem different from us, is one of the most important things we can do in life. The incident that had started with an expired coupon and a moment of cruel judgment had rippled out to touch hundreds of lives, teaching lessons about empathy, dignity, and the power of treating every person as someone worthy of respect.